One. Welcome back to Backward Point Podcast. My name is Nazra Sayed, and with me, as always, is my brother, co-host, and Glenn Maxwell stan, Bashar Sayed. Bashar, welcome to the podcast.
Welcome to Backward Point Podcast. This is an incredible episode we're going to do. Historic one. I say you go out there, you melt the Sachin statue in Wankhede, and you turn it into a Glenn Maxwell one. Hot take.
Make it look like somebody else, entirely different. I think that anything that you do in tribute to this innings is going to fall short for what actually this innings was. What the only thing that they can do is go out there, break your legs, and go out there and bat for 126 balls. That's the only thing that somebody can do to give an actual tribute for what was arguably or unarguably the best ODI innings of all time. Bashar, Glenn Maxwell, 201 not out in a chasing cause when their home team was 90 for 7. What do you say about all of that?
The first thing I want to say, you mentioned breaking a leg. Glenn Maxwell, earlier this year, I think it was December of last year, he broke his leg in a freak accident. He was at his friend's birthday party. It was raining outside, and I think him and his friend were chasing each other, and they slipped. His friend slipped on him and fell over his leg. His leg snapped.
As one does. Yep.
And he broke his leg, and he was out of cricket for months. Just last week, he got a concussion while he was trying to golf, and his golf cart tipped over, and so he fell over his head. He bruised his face, and he missed the game against England. So having gone through all of that to come out here, came into bat when Australia was 91 for 7, chasing 293 at the Wankhede Stadium. It's a tough stadium to be chasing runs. Their ball moves and hoops around. As we saw early on, the way that Naveen Ul Haq was bowling to Warner and Head, I felt like it was sort of Stuart Broad at Headingley. So given those conditions and given the fact that when Maxwell and Cummins came to the partnership, the win probability for Australia at the time was less than 1%. Which just shows how incredible this knock was.
Also shows that's a stupid 13. Like stupid 13 is like stupid 13 stat to have the win probability. I don't know who is paying for this. Is there like a big oil company behind that stat meter? Because it's the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. It's like, what are you trying to predict here? You can never predict in sports exactly what's going to happen. And,
But 91 for 7, would you have given Australia a chance to chase this down?
I was just going to say, like, my win predictor was also quite low. That's not saying much, but I mean, such an iconic day for Afghanistan. You know, Afghanistan actually played like Australia in this entire game, and it'll go down as a forgotten performance just because of what happened on the other end. Afghanistan, you have to give them their flowers. We talked about Bangladesh in the previous podcast, how shit they are and how horrible they've been for the better part of the past 2 decades. And here comes a brand new team, third World Cup ever, and is giving everyone a run for their money. I think Afghanistan is truly the formidable side. They should have been given full member status way before the Bengalis should have. And it just proves to show that this team has been dominating this game for the past 2-3 years at least. They've sort of found the cheat code with their 4-pronged spin attack. They know what they want to get out of this pitch. They know what a good total is for any team to defend. And it just goes to show that they were on par to beat Australia in a historic win. And a win that Australia would have never forgotten. Even though Australia has made the semis, it would have just been an iconic achievement of sorts when Afghanistan was sort of finding their way up into this tournament. Maybe, clinching a semifinal spot with this win. But Glenn Maxwell had other plans. I just want to talk about the sheer magnificence of this innings, the sheer power that was on display, and the sheer willpower that was on display. First and foremost, I want to say that we were talking about melting statues and rebuilding icons. The only person's icon that should be built anywhere is Ian Smith. This man is out of breath at every single match he commentates. The final in 2019 and today again, this guy is going to get a heart attack. Yeah, I think you should sponsor a pacemaker for Ian Smith because he's just losing his mind. His veins and his forehead are popping. And like with literal Aussies punting and Watson in the commentary booth, he was the one who was the loudest. He was the one who was basically just finding a way to make sense of all this. I'm losing words right now as we speak. And just Ian Smith is the GOAT, is what I'm trying to say. He's the closest to Peter Drury that we will ever get. In a world of Rambos and Ravi Shastris, we have an Ian Smith, so God bless him for that. But even the great Ian Smith was unable to formulate words to finally find out what it was that was charging Glenn Maxwell. Man, it just seemed like at one point his century that he got was one of those, good for you, but you're going to lose this game thing. And then it was a point in that innings where it just felt like maybe the century is not in vain. There is a purpose to the madness. There is actually a higher power at play here, and that higher power was in favor of Glenn Maxwell. Atheists, if you are watching, explain this to me, please, because I am awestruck.
It is all credits to Qudrat ka Nizam, right? So,
We have to talk about it.
If they had won this match, they would have definitely been in contention to be in the semifinals. I understand the run rate isn't the greatest, but having Australia 91 for 7, had they rolled them over for like 110, 120, their run rate would have improved. So they would have been clawing their ways into the semifinal for a spot. And I want to also just take a moment to feel for the Afghanistan players, in specific.
Zadran, bro.
Yeah, Zadran.
Zadran is the first Afghani opener to carry his bat, score 100 and carry his bat through an innings ever.
Yeah.
And to do that against Australia with the likes of Hazelwood, Stark, Zampa, Cummins, tallest of orders, big salutes to you, big man. Unfortunately, you were on the rough side of that innings. And what can I say? Like it's moments like these where blistering performances come out of nowhere, where teams who are sort of fighting their upstroll get knocked out. I feel for the Afghanistan team. I feel for the Afghani fans. It's a tough one, but you know what? If you're a Pakistani fan, you've been there before. You've been there when Mike Hussey was going crazy. You've been there when Matthew Wade was going crazy. Glenn Maxwell I'm just glad this wasn't Pakistan, because I would have broken a TV or something.
I want to get into records galore.
Let's go.
Record-breaking knock, record-breaking partnership between Cummins and Maxwell. So Glenn Maxwell becomes the first Australian to score a double hundred in ODIs. Shoutouts to Glenn Maxwell. I think the second highest score is probably, is it David Warner or is it Shane Watson?
185.
Yeah.
David Warner, I believe. But Hados is also in the top 3, 181 against Zimbabwe. So shout out to Hados.
Maxwell also becomes the first player to score a double hundred in a run chase. There's been multiple double hundreds by Guptill, Chris Gale, Rohit Sharma has a couple. I think Sachin even has one, but they're all batting first. This is also the first non-opener to score double hundred in ODIs. So the names that I mentioned before, Sachin, Rohit Sharma, Gale, Guptill, they're all openers. So they have longer games to play.
He would have been the second opener to do that if Fakhar Zaman had scored that 200 against South Africa and that blistering run chase where Quinton de Kock had, sheepishly and cheapishly, I should say, both run out Fakhar Zaman. But oh well, let bygones be bygones.
This is also the highest individual score for Australia in ODI World Cups. And I think most of the stats that I'm mentioning is for men's ODIs. There was a freak player in their women's team back in 97 where she scored about 200 at Mumbai. So a lot of the records that she already has, but this is for the men's ODIs.
Sure.
This is also the highest individual score by a batter at number 5 or lower. This is the highest individual score in men's ODI World Cup men's ODI chases, like chasing scores. And also, in my favorite stat is going to come up, highest partnership for the 8th wicket or lower in ODI history. We do not want to overlook the contributions of Pat Cummins. Pat Cummins scored 12 runs in the whole partnership between himself and Maxwell of 202 runs. His contribution with respect to his runs to the partnership is about 5.95%. And Pat Cummins is me in group projects.
I want to say, if Shoaib Judd is watching, Shoaib Judd, strike rate, Pat Cummins, what's happening? When is the statement coming out? When are you going to talk about it? He's after Babar Azam's strike rate all the time. What about this?
12 off 68, only one boundary. Man was there on the crease for over 2 hours.
Is this the greatest of all time innings for Pat Cummins?
This is the equivalent to the Jack Leach single.
Oh.
The Junaid Khan single.
Ooh.
the Tausif Ahmed single back against India in Sharjah. So that is just the magnitude of the knock. I would even say this is the Shoaib Akhtar knock 2010 versus South Africa, where Abdul Razak on the other end was smashing it all over. And there was a point in this innings where I was trying to compare this knock of Glenn Maxwell to Abdul Razak's, but then this just exceeded it way past Abdul Razak's innings. And Razak even himself accepted today that this was a much better knock given the context where it happened. And I think we need to talk about where this inning stands in the history of ODI cricket, ODI World Cup cricket. There was a couple of innings that were coming into debates when you're talking about this inning in specific. Okay, firstly, what do you think this is the greatest knock of all time? Because the other knocks that are in contention are the 175 by Herschel Gibbs, chasing 434. Another one that kept coming up in our Instagram messages, chasing. So India was batting first, and they were 17 for 5. Unluckily,
they were 9 for 4 at one point, Bashar.
Unluckily, that game was not broadcasted because of the broadcasters at the time being on strike. So
crazy talk,
which just makes the whole innings an even greater myth.
Yeah, totally. I'm trying to think, and I want to hesitate a little bit just because I don't want recency bias to take over and be like, oh yeah, this is the greatest thing ever. The Herschel Gibbs one is a very good one, actually. A lot of the Virat Kohli innings while chasing are actually formidable as well. You know, a great World Cup chase, Babar Azam against New Zealand in 2019 as well. We keep bringing that one up. I don't want to say number one just yet. I have to go through all my stats and check out all the highlights and for myself to actually formulate that opinion. I'm going to be using my head on this one, guys, and it's quite a shocker. But I'm going to say top 3 for sure. If not number 1, it's definitely top 3. I don't think it goes below that number. I'm actually failing to think of any other innings that's actually, to me, it might actually be number 1. But again, I need to take some time. Give me a couple more days. I think now this is just speculation, right? If the Pakistan New Zealand game had been a full game, and Fakhar Zaman had gone to chase 400 against New Zealand, hitting a double century, maybe that would have been a better chase. But again, in this situation, Australia were 90 for 7, and that would have been a straightforward chase for Fakhar Zaman if Babar was still there, and Rizwan and all that. So even then, I hesitate to say, but I think it might be, man. There's no other innings that comes close to this.
World Cups. One of the other ones that comes into mind is the Ben Stokes one in the ODI World Cup final, the last ODI World Cup.
Yeah.
This one for me rates very highly just because Australia was 91 for 7, like you mentioned. The win probability was less than 1%. And Australia before this match had not qualified for the semis of the World Cup.
Officially.
So, given that knock, to win it from a place where nobody would have ever expected. And also to add to that, the man was batting on one leg, bro.
Sometimes it's cramp, sometimes it's acting, bro. You know it.
So just the way he was using his hands, the hand-eye coordination, poor bowling from Afghanistan, but obviously don't want to take any credit away from Glenn Maxwell.
So give me a second. Like, why was it poor bowling from Afghanistan? Like, what were they doing wrong? Just keeping it in the slot?
Yeah, they just kept feeding it into his own zone. If the man can't move, you just keep bowling him wide or maybe even bouncers. He'll probably hit one in the air. But they just kept feeding it to him right exactly where he was looking for. This innings, actually, the latter half, made me remember what Kevin Peterson used to say in his masterclass. He said, when I think of batting, it's all hands. It's all get your head to the ball and swing through it. No, don't use your feet. And that's exactly what Glenn Maxwell did. Apparently, he is a multi-talented sports person. He also plays tennis and other sports similar to an AB de Villiers. So once you do play those different sports, you develop other skills. I think today Maxwell's wrists were incredible. The way he was hitting the ball through, and it was ridiculous. The one shot that stands out for me is the reverse sweep scoop over short third man for 6. That is a ridiculous hit. I mean, I think after AB de Villiers and maybe Surya Kumar Yadav, Glenn Maxwell is the only really 360 player in current world cricket, in my opinion.
No, genuinely, like most of his later half innings were golf swings. They were in the slot and he would just swinging them for 6. I want to talk about how impeccable his timing was because he genuinely mistimed very few, if any. And the Wankhede Stadium being as small as it was just good enough for him to get them over the stands. And, innings like these will go down into history to be like one of those warrior-some innings, demigod innings where people just come in from the sky and save this almost begotten team. And I'm just happy that I was able to witness it because honestly, this tournament was a little bit of a downer. But in the last week, Bashar, it's really picked up.
Ever since you called out that this tournament is boring, there's not much happening, dead rubbers like the game yesterday between Sri Lanka and Bangladesh had one of the biggest headlines.
Nagin Derby, bro.
Today, one of the greatest ODI innings of all time. So World Cup looking like it's blown open. The number 4 spot is still up for grabs.
We should talk about that a little bit because I think we'll do a full episode on what quote unquote Qudrat ka Nizam is and what it means and what it'll look like. But man, that number 4 spot looks real juicy, especially since that Mazhar Arshad tweet about the probability of Pakistan making it. All these things need to happen. And I want to say 95% of those things have happened with a New Zealand-Sri Lanka washout in the cards as well. How does this game help Pakistan get into the semis?
I think the first and foremost thing is Afghanistan losing this match ensures they are stuck at 8 points and their next match is against South Africa. Also, if they win that match, their run rate will likely still be below Pakistan and New Zealand. So if I'm being very transparent, the number 4 spot is really between New Zealand and Pakistan. So the upcoming crucial game for Pakistan and New Zealand is going to be the game between Sri Lanka and New Zealand. We talked yesterday. This is going to be a riled up Sri Lankan side. They are pissed off at Shakib. And
who, by the way, is ruled out of the tournament because he broke his finger.
Karma.
So karma is my boyfriend. Karma is my god.
Cricket karma is real.
Any Swifties out there? Leave a comment, bro. I see the disapproval in Bashar's face.
No, I want to say something very controversial, but I'm just trying to hold back on it.
What, is it anti-Swifty?
No, it's a little anti-India and anti-Amazoni.
Go for it, bro. What are you talking about?
2019 World Cup, Ben Stokes in his book mentioned that MS Dhoni, there was this group match. It was one of the last games of the World Cup in the group stages where
if India had won that, then Pakistan had gone through.
Exactly. And it seemed like Kedar Jadhav and MS Dhoni were like playing really slow. And what I mean by that is they just lacked intent to chase the score. And Dhoni is one of the greatest finishers. So for him to sort of choke and bottle that was a bit shocking for me. And then Ben Stokes later that year in his book mentioned clearly that day he was shocked that MS Dhoni was playing without any intent. And then, if that is actually the case, that's true. Cricket karma came back and ensured that India was not able to chase 240 against New Zealand in Manchester, was it?
I forget the venue, but yeah,
they weren't able to go to the finals.
Yeah, why were you scared of saying that, bro? There's some agenda you're afraid of?
People take it very personal.
Do you want to say 4 letters in a consistent in a straight up line that scares you?
No,
none at all. Okay, no. Well, I mean that's a fair comparison because Shakib, being as dodgy and shifty as he was, wanted to get Angela Matthews out. Now his thumb's broken. He's out of the tournament. Good on you. Here's my thumb.
There's been other videos that have started coming up from the past where Shakib just misbehaving against umpires.
I tweeted that from our account. You guys check out Backward Point's Twitter account. I tweeted that, and that's my point. This man thinks he's bigger than the game, and you cannot be bigger than the game. The game is why you are even who you are. So, no disrespect, but disrespect, The
other thing I want to just talk about is Maxwell. So one of the comments from our patrons, Umair, mentioned that we're so glad that Maxwell got out for a golden duck against Pakistan because if he had gotten going against Pakistan, they would have probably scored like 450 plus. So thank you, Maxwell, for that. But Maxwell is a high-risk player. His ODI strike rate in his career is 127. I don't even think Babar Azam's T20 strike rate is that much.
Babar Azam's T20 strike rate is 129.
Right. So it's very close, very comparable.
Yeah, don't ever.
But my point is, I'm not trying to degrade Babar. But my point is that.
But you almost did. So what are you talking about?
My point is, he plays high risk cricket, right? He's sort of like an Asif Ali kind of guy, where if he'll get going, he'll probably win you the match. But if not, he's gonna go for a golden duck like he did against Pakistan. The point to notice here is that Australia persists with him because they know his ability. They know on his day, he can demolish any side like he did today. And I think Pakistan, if they sort of groom a player like a Glenn Maxwell, you don't give an opportunity to many of the guys who played good at number 6. Like, for example, in Asif Ali, Akhush Dilshah, and Iftikhar Ahmed. Would have loved to see more of how they could evolve and become more risk takers and don't have that fear of failure in their mind, because a lot of Australians, they have a lot of clarity in their minds. I'm reading Shane Watson's book where he talks about how international cricket is more of a mental game, and just having clarity in your thought process can make the game so much more easier. And that just seems like what the Australian players have in their minds.
Also, like we talk about Butterfast quite often on this podcast. Nakvi said in the podcast that Australia beat Pakistan, and nobody gives a shit about cricket in Australia. My boys Ian Higgins and Pezza from the TGC podcast have to really pander to their own audience to make sure that they get views and clicks. Like, that's just the fact. But that being said, they are still selling out arenas and rooms in Australia, but they've come out to say that, hey, does anybody even know that Australia is kind of winning and smashing it at the World Cup? And that pisses us off more, because then you have people like Glenn Maxwell who, obviously the Australian team is persisting and making sure that he succeeds, come through making astonishing runs, winning games from cleaning up victories from defeat that were like certain. And then they're probably gonna go back home and nobody's gonna give a shit. It's mind blowing, Bashar. That's what I'm trying to say. If these guys were rugby players, they would have been, they say in order like Sone pe tol diya, like they would have given the weight of gold of their own weight. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but it was just one of those performances where you'll look back into this performance and try to find meaning and purpose, and all you're gonna find is sheer willpower. And that's what Glenn Maxwell did through all of the innings that he's played, tried to sustain himself in the squad of Australian team. Sometimes he's in, sometimes he's out. Sometimes he's only a T20 player. Sometimes he's only, playing the leagues. But he just came into this World Cup, second ODI century in this World Cup already, from a number 6 player. Goes to show his intent is there. He wants to win this. And like you said, Omer said, like, good luck. We were lucky that he didn't score any runs against Pakistan, because that would have been a tough sight to see, man.
Australia is a true sporting nation. Like, they're great at field hockey. They're great at cricket, rugby. And I think Australians mostly only care about cricket when it's home season.
Sure.
When they want to watch the Boxing Day Test match or, the Big Bash, home ODI or T20s. Hugh Jackman, the Australian actor, is famously really into cricket. I
would love to have him on the podcast.
And talk about cricket.
Yeah, man. Like, he would have some great insight. He played cricket too. There's a very fun video of him, I think, batting against Shane Warne.
Was it Brett Lee or Shane Warne?
It was either
Brett Lee and Pierce Morgan, and it was Shane Warne versus.
Yeah, right. It was Hugh Jackman. So I would love to see that. A lot of actors, actually, low key people who you wouldn't think are into cricket are Hugh Jackman, big cricket fan. Ed Sheeran was at the Pakistan-England 2016
Pakistan,
test.
South Africa. As one of the one-day games, he was there too.
Yeah, at the England game as well, he was there at the test match. I remember he was in the commentary box. Will Arnett, Canadian, he was the voice of Lego Batman, big cricket fan. I just heard him on his podcast talk about how he was watching the T20 World Cup. He was watching the Pakistan-India game. So Chris Martin played cricket all the way up through A-levels. There was actually a really fun photo of him and Phil Harvey, the Coldplay manager. They went to school together in cricket whites. Like, how the cricket teams take pictures, like, bowlers in the back, batsmen in the front, like the whole hands on the laps thing. Like, there's a really fun picture like that of the two of them.
Daniel Radcliffe. I think I saw him at Lord's at one of the test matches.
Really?
Yeah.
Piers Morgan plays cricket. Niall Horan, in the One Direction Story of My Life video, is wearing a cricket test cardigan.
Nice.
Deep cut Who would have thought I was a directioner? I'm not. I'm pretty sure it's Niall though. Could be Zayn. One of the two.
This is our third episode in a row. We're on a hat trick. We've just completed the hat trick. And we'll probably be back on Thursday after the Sri Lanka versus New Zealand match. Hoping we'll be back with some good news because that game will sort of determine how Pakistan needs to play against England, if they're in contention, if run rate is still in consideration, what the equation is for Pakistan to qualify. So we'll be back in a few days, but I'm sure you guys enjoy this episode right here.
Before we go, I just want a quick question. Do you think it's going to happen?
You know,
do you believe?
Before today, whatever I've been saying, the opposite's been happening. And today on the Discord server, I just mentioned that Glenn Maxwell's going to chase us, and he did. So I think I've broken my own jinx.
Lovely. So let's call it.
Man, I feel like it's going to happen. Pakistan versus India semifinal. It's loading. The script is written.
This is what it's. So let's say in a situation where that happens, Pakistan India semifinal is going to be a repeat of the 2011 semifinal, and Australia South Africa semifinal repeat of 1999.
Well, I hope it's not like a repeat of the result. One of our
I'm just saying it's a rematch for sure. If we're still gonna go with that analogy, 99 final, Pakistan Australia.
Whoa.
Time to take a lot of revenges, karmize your boyfriend, all that stuff. Just make Qudrat ka Nizam happen. That's all I'm saying.
Before in this podcast, I mentioned that Pakistan probably doesn't deserve to go to the semis. But, and I also said that it's better if Pakistan finish number 5, they can go back, self-reflect, and then start building for the next ODI World Cup. But someone in our Discord server mentioned that I would rather have Pakistan lose to India in the semis and be in the top 4 than not qualify at all. Like he would still take the loss against India, but rather go into the game against India in the semis. And you never know. A Fakhr Zaman in form, a Babar Azam who's evolving and getting better game by game, a Pakistan bowling attack with Wasim Jr. I can't believe I'm saying this, but with Wasim Jr. is looking very, very strong. So you never know, but it's far ahead. We got to look at the next couple of games before we can even come to that match. But yeah, looking forward to that.
Yeah, in this moment, congratulations, Glenn Maxwell. Congratulations, TGZ Podcast. I was just listening to this podcast before shooting this, and boy, they were happy. And I'm glad they were happy, man. They've seen some tough days in this World Cup. I want us to be happy, and I'm hoping that this team actually makes it through to the semis. Yeah.
Just one last thing. Before this innings from Maxwell, whenever I used to be feeling down, depressed, I would go back and watch 2 innings. The first one is the Abdul Razak against South Africa in 2010. And the second one was Ben Stokes at Headingley against Australia. But I think I'm going to add this innings to my list, to my playlist, and I'll watch this innings. And I'm sure alongside myself, many of you, for many, many years to come.
You will definitely add this in your playlist of rewatchability, but the ICC will not add this to their YouTube link. So I don't know how you're going to watch it again. Congratulations again to everybody involved. This World Cup is, again, wide open. Never thought I'd say that. I thought, 19 games in, this World Cup was done and dusted. But number 4 spot up for grabs. We forgot to thank our Patreon fam and our Discord fam in the beginning. So, you guys are not forgotten. We love you guys. We're just super excited. We had just watched the highlights for the 3rd time and, just buzzing with the adrenaline, Bashar. So apologies for that. You guys want to join the Patreon. You guys want to join all of our membership stuff. It's all in the links below. Check it out. Discord fam, shout outs to you. And we'll see you guys for Sri Lanka and New Zealand preview game. I don't know, definitely review game. And then Pakistan, England preview. Man, I don't know what to say. I'm very anxious. The next couple of days are going to be tough for us here in the podcast. Keep yourselves hydrated. Keep yourselves, in good faith. I hope that we have some good news when we come back next. Yeah.
See ya.
Yeah. Cheers, guys. Take care of yourselves and bye-bye.